processing of ordnance survey data. So an open content project of going out and creating our own map of the towns where we live, the villages where we live, for ourselves. And schools going out with little GPS trackers and mapping their area, submitting this data up into the OpenStreetMap project and contributing into that shared resource of what happens in their area. What a great thing to do in a geography lesson. That it's not just work for themselves anymore. And of course, other cool things you can do with GPS trackers as well as tagging photos, tagging field trip stuff. This is an example of they've gone around their racetrack, a little GPS tracker, and then analysed that afterwards, seeing which bits of the track they were travelling most quickly around and which bits they'd sort of slow down. I think that's sort of fairly fake data, is at least my take on those numbers at the top. But again, using that technology as a way to enhance their understanding of geography, their understanding of place. And what to do geocaching? You should. It's brilliant. Okay. Google geocaching.com or go to geocaching.com. We've got all of these tiny little treasure chests buried or hidden, I should say, around the country. And you get the GPS coordinates of these things. And you go off and you have to solve puzzles occasionally. And you find this little, it's either an ammo box or a 39mm spool can, or there's some tiny, tiny ones hidden at these GPS locations. And inside is a little logbook, and there's usually little sort of gifts inside, so you put one in and take one out. And what a wonderful thing to do with schools. So they don't necessarily have to use the official geocaches, but why not? But how about doing that sort of nature trail around the school grounds, that sort of puzzle around the park, around the school? Do it as a team exercise. What a wonderful thing to do. And again, using innovative technology developed elsewhere. Let me show you my friend Paul Hay and some of the sort of virtual field trip stuff he's been doing with his school up in Sheffield.
Good people like yourselves. On your page there's a map with lots of photographs. So as you hover over little pins on the map, you can actually look at a photograph that was taken exactly in that location.
I'm looking at Google Map and at pictures that have been tagged in different places in Lowdown Valley. It comes up from Sheffield Arena.
The pictures were taken by a previous Year 8 group around the Don Valley area of Sheffield. And they've been...
I can't help that the previous Year 8 group actually got the funner lesson. They were the ones who went to Sheffield and took the pictures. This group just get to look at them on Google Maps. It's not quite the same, is it? But again, what a great use of the technology, and he's borrowing ideas from elsewhere. So moving on now to technology transfer from other unexpected places, the world of finance. Anybody here got Nectar? Quite a sentence to give you a Nectar card. Absolutely, okay. And again, think about your digital footprint there. Again, this is something teachers, I hope, would start to talk about with children, the footprint that they leave. But all of this huge data set, which our transactions with computers, one sort or another, generate. There's not much yet happening in the school sector of using that data, but I suspect it will be one of the next best things. And of course, it was on that Nectar list of those next big trends. So Ruth Kelly, the then Secretary of State, we've had lots of Secretaries of State in education, which is very frequently, writing in the e-strategy, the Harnessing Technology report, in the future, the personal online space will be more than simply a storage place. Digital space that's personalised, that remembers what the learner is interested in and suggests relevant websites or alerts them to courses and learning opportunities that fit their needs. So what she has in mind, what her advisors probably had in mind back in 2005, is the notion of the Amazon recommends. You seem to have done very well with these fractions activities. Why don't you try this fraction activity next? And the computer providing the right learning object. It's the sort of GPS model same, so even allowing sort of previous attainment. But going into the Moodle log files and doing some analysis on how they use Moodle, it turns out that the residuals above and below those trend lines do correlate, or did in this sample, correlate with how they use in virtual learning environment. Those who stepped back from sort of day-to-day forum discussions and the sort of homework exercise and looked back over the course as a whole, looked back over previous wiki exercises, were the ones who got the greatest benefit from it. So that sort of log analysis, you've got that data, and we don't yet have easy tools to analyze it, but they are, I think, coming. This is something which the department provide. It's a thing called Raise Online, which looks at how children do on individual test questions in their SATs and the optional PCA tests which come in previous years and subsequent years, and drills down into the question-by-question responses from a cohort of pupils. So, take a look down the bottom of the screen here. What we have is the percentage of correct responses of your class and your school compared to the national percentage. So we did much better when it came to calculations, but we did slightly worse when it came to using applied numbers. So using that information as well as improving subsequent teaching. And of course you can do pupil level stuff as well. There's a firm called Formatrix, or a product called Formatrix, which does this sort of stuff in a much broader scope way and has done statistical analysis in a much more sort of rigorous way and uses a much larger data set than Raise Online seems to make use of. And their idea is looking at this within school variation. So the league tables which you hear about are very good at saying one school is better than another, one school seems to do very, very well. And that's not hugely helpful when it comes to improving your teaching. How should we improve our teaching? Well, we should do it better. It's basically what it says. The within school variation becomes much more interesting. And this is a tool which allows head teachers scarily to say, oh, that teacher is much better than that teacher, or that teacher is much better with high-end pupils than that teacher is. That teacher seems to actually get much better variation or improvement year on year with lower ability groups than that teacher does. So, targeting your teaching on the basis of the data, and allowing the schools to do that sort of data analysis and target the resources they employ. It's like scary stuff, those bits in schools. But, as I say, I think there will be more of this to come. Chris Gehry, who's one of these executive heads that runs a whole consortium of schools, talking about the way he's using that at last September's NACE All Members Annual Conference.
So this stuff with predictive analytics allows you to understand so-called counterintuitive risk groups. So we found this one with Microsoft a couple of years ago with their software, and we found that the groups the software was identifying were not we wouldn't actually get up. Because most software is as intelligent as the questions you ask it, whereas CRM gives you correlations to say, green ideals do this may or may not be of use to you. So actually it's interesting and very useful. Again, this came from a kind of study of Tesco's and how they use Clubcard and identified 118, 130 different subgroups in terms of customer segmentation. So they then can actually fuel the demands of those customers. Also interesting edge behaviours where people are migrating from one kind of behaviour to another and how they can either repeat that or help develop it depending on whether they want their money. So we're looking at similar models really in how you can then begin to understand your groupings. And this, the Tesco's guy, the chief executive said when they put Clubcard in 94, I've learned more about our customers in 6 months than I have in 30 years. Again, I think if schools have this kind of technology, they would begin to understand the complexities of what we're dealing with, and the fact the narratives that teachers operate with are useful, but actually wrong. So we need to actually use this to compile different narratives about what's going on. So the personalisation that comes out of this in terms of looking at groups with regards to risk reduction, we're trying to build resilience, and resilience is a slippery word. I just simply regard it as making the right choices in life. So throwing the shell at teaching.
So I don't know if you quite caught what he was doing there. What he's doing is using commercial customer relationship management few sort of final remarks. This is nicked off one of the flyers in your delegate pack, but I hope you see the link between how schools are doing this sort of innovation, some of this innovative practice, and the sort of things which apply outside of the school sector. So, what is open innovation? Well, it's about seeking useful innovations, innovative technologies outside your organisation. Schools have given us examples here of all borrowing ideas from elsewhere. They're taking these, making them their own, and doing exciting things with them. Making your own internally developed inventions, innovative technologies as widely available to others as possible. It's no surprise that the folks who are doing this stuff are really quite happy to share this experience. Yeah? And with the Moodle stuff, where you have got people writing bits of Moodle code in school, contributing that up into the Moodle repositories, new modules, new activities. I think that's great to see. Again, working collaboratively with external partners wherever it's advantageous, and that can be open source projects, and that can be commercially provided software. There are barriers to innovation in the school sector as elsewhere, and one of this I think is going to be fairly common. The risk aversity is, I think, one of the great barriers, and that tends to be a school leadership thing, but is also the risk aversity from network managers down the bottom of that list, who say, well, okay, this all looks very exciting, but it's going to involve us making changes to our firewall or whatever. Central procurement is a real challenge for schools doing exciting, doing innovative things when all of their IT is provided by some managed service company. And there is a lot of concern across education that can, or across the school sector, that can make it very difficult to innovate. But there are a number of enablers. I hope a lot of these you've seen from what I've been showing you, what I've been talking about already. And the enlightened school leadership is probably the single most important thing. So any of you school governors, why not? Why not? Good thing to be, but making the school a place where teachers are empowered to do innovative things, where that risk aversity is something which we manage rather than use it as a blanket no things. I remember 3 schools ago, my head teacher, his ambition was to always say yes. When teachers came to him and can I do something? He'd always try and say yes. And of course, empowering the techies to do cool things and letting the students explore and experiment. The lack of money, you might see as a barrier, but actually, for a lot of the examples we've looked at, it's been a real enabler that schools have wanted to do innovative things. They've not had the money to sort of buy commercial off-the-shelf solutions, and so they have gone and borrowed ideas from elsewhere, developed things themselves, or adapted things themselves. And so open source and indeed Web 2 technology that's where a lot of the innovation is happening, because schools can't afford to do things other ways. And I suspect with 25% of the money suddenly going, getting to a position where children are allowed to bring in their mobile phones, because it is the computing device which they'll each have one-to-one access to. And again, acknowledging the opportunities for informal learning outside of school. The network's hugely important. And things like TeachMeet, which allow people to share those ideas face-to-face, the use of Web 2 tools, the cross-phase, the cross-sector networks, very, very important too, and also getting those ideas from international networks. A lot of the innovation you see is led by a pedagogic vision of this is the sort of learning we want children to have. Think about the game-based learning stuff. Think about the collaboration that Moodle and other learning environments provide. But it is also technologically determined. A lot of the innovation we're seeing is happening in schools because the tech now lets us do these things. So I think it's got to be both of those together. I think that's pretty much all I've got to say. If you do want to get in touch, email address up on the screen. I'm on Twitter far more than I should be. I don't blog nearly as much as I should. The Open Source School